The skill we will be teaching in this video is backstroke. It will include a 5-week training program developed in accordance to the theories of motor learning. The backstroke swimming technique has several key elements which contribute to the efficiency of the movement. These include posture, head position, kicking, rotation, arm timing, and arm recovery.
In reference to Gentile's taxonomy, backstroke can be classified as a 4-dimensional skill. These dimensions include in-motion regulatory conditions, static environment with no intertrial variability, the body is in motion, and there is no object manipulation.
We can consider backstroke more of a gross motor skill compared to a fine motor skill, as it incorporates large muscle groups and compound movements. It is a continuous motor skill as it is cyclical and repetitive movement opposed to discrete motor skill. And finally, more of a closed motor skill as opposed to an open motor skill.
When measuring performance, it is important to consider to take a qualitative and quantitative approach. For the purposes of our program, we only use qualitative measurements to assess the quality of technique as this determines the speed and efficiency of the stroke.
Posner suggests that the learning process is sequential as we move through specific stages as we learn. There are 3 stages to learning a new skill. The first stage is cognitive stage. It involves understanding the skill through observation, verbal feedback, and self-sensory feedback. As the learner has no prior experience to performing this task, we can expect to see a large number of errors during performance, as the learner is trying to grasp the concept of what is required to perform the skill. Beginners generally don't know what is required of them to improve, even if they are aware they are doing something wrong. It is important to simplify skills to allow them to gain an understanding to progress to the next stage. The next stage is the associative stage. It assists the learner how each of the components are interrelated and learn how to adjust to demands. The aim of the associative stage is to organize more effective movement patterns to produce actions. At this stage, we expect the learner to be able to associate environmental cues with the movement. During this stage, the learner begins to refine technique by decreasing the amount of errors and performance variability. The learner will also develop the ability to detect his or her own errors in performance. As the learner is becoming more efficient, it is important to teach them to be able to supply themselves with feedback on how to perform the task, rather than them relying on the teacher to provide feedback. In the final stage, consistency increases, errors decrease, the learner becomes more efficient, and the task becomes autonomic, with little conscious thought needed.
The technique of backstroke was demonstrated to the learner before they were asked to replicate it. By using the implicit teaching method, no verbal instruction was given to the learner before attempting the technique. This facilitated the initial stages of their learning, as implicit learning is proven to be more effective than explicit learning. Augmented feedback was then provided to improve the technique to correct any errors. External feedback is needed because intrinsic feedback is not as efficient within the sport of swimming.
Keep your head in a neutral position facing the ceiling directly above you. This keeps you as high as possible in the water. Pull your stomach in, flattening your back to eliminate arching. This will help you maintain your high body position in the water. Keep your foot in a relaxed position, extend your ankles and point your toes. With a fairly straight leg position, bend your knees slightly as your foot moves towards the bottom of the pool. Straighten your legs as your foot moves to the surface of the water. Keeping your toes pointed throughout, accelerate in the up kick. Try to kick from your hip rather than your knee to optimize your power. A kickboard can be used to help you stay buoyant in the water while you work on your kick technique. Fins can also be used to improve your leg strength and body positioning.
Learners obtain sensory information from the various sensory systems while they perform the skill. The instructions can provide additional feedback that supplements or augments the internal sensory feedback. This additional feedback is commonly referred in motor learning as augmented feedback. When working with beginners, an instructor should describe the critical error and what should be done to correct the problem. When used in this way, augmented feedback facilitates the learning of the motor skill by not only identifying the error, but also clarifying how to correct it on the next attempt. Another mode of augmented feedback is to motivate the learner to continue striving toward a goal. This type of information is known as knowledge of results. For example, telling a participant the amount of time he or she took to complete an activity. Augmented feedback can also provide information about what the person did that led to a performance outcome. The term used to describe this type of information is knowledge of performance, which can be information about what a participant is doing that hinders his or her achievements of performance goals. The guidance hypothesis predicts that the guiding properties of augmented feedback are beneficial for motor learning, when used to reduce error but detrimental when relied on. Therefore, a heavily guiding form of feedback may be detrimental for learning. Guidance hypothesis predicts that positive with a high relative frequency of augmented feedback would be detrimental for learning. The learner can develop a dependency on the availability of augmented feedback, so that when they have to perform without it, performance will be poor.
Improve your stroke technique for a faster, more efficient swim by gently placing your hand in the water with your hand rotated outwards to allow your little finger to enter the water first. This enables you to position your arm correctly to catch the water. Keeping your elbow positioned high, initiate the pull phase of the stroke by pressing down with your forearm, without pulling the side of your body. As your arm pulls through the water, point your fingers towards the side of the pull and maintain a high elbow position. Towards the end of the stroke, push the water backwards, accelerate your hand out of the water, leading thumb first into recovery phase. On the recovery phase, raise your arm in a straight line towards the ceiling. Bring your arm down beside your head, ready to enter the water for the pull phase. Paddles may be used to increase strength and improve hand position in the water.
Positive transfer means that practice in one activity results in improvements on another activity. This usually occurs when the two skills in question are similar in some way. Having already mastered one of the skills makes learning the second skill easier. Coaches can aid theory positive transfer by making sure that the basics of the first skill are well learnt so that they transfer more easily into the second skill. For the purposes of the backstroke, a transfer test will be conducted to see how well the kicking technique will aid the learner in swimming freestyle.
This is the 5-week training program that was developed. It was specifically designed to adhere to the fundamental stages of learning. Distributed block practice was used initially to teach the individual segments of the stroke. As the learner progressed, segmented part practice was recommended as this challenged the learner to continually adapt to new situations.
The quickest way of learning the backstroke is through the part practice method. Part practice is best for skills that are high in complexity and low in organisation. Segmented part practice describes a breakdown of the skill into several techniques that contribute to the overall efficiency of the skill. By simplifying the technique into shorter stages of the skill, the client will learn the skill more effectively and develop a greater understanding. For example, the training program shows the kicking component of the stroke, highlighted in red, the arm component of the stroke, in blue, and the combination of the two components highlighted in green.
The activity of swimming can become fairly repetitive, especially when learning a new stroke. Therefore, the variety of exercises within the training program were chosen and organised to keep the participant interested, therefore limit their loss of motivation. Motivation plays a key part in the overall success in learning the skill. One way to increase motivation is to set short-term and long-term goals for the learner. As the participant achieves goals and observes their progress, they will continue to strive towards the next goal. Their video shows the participant doing exercises that isolate each phase of the backstroke technique, and practicing these movements individually provides variety to the training program. In contrast to swimming the backstroke style repetitively, by focus on techniques individually, it also helps to cement the technique in the procedural memory, which is specific to storing and retrieving information about motor skills.